Was loaned her 5 books that are called
Sub Rosa America.
Right, Sub Rosa America, and with several other subtitles. And I was going to try to read them quickly before she came here. And let me tell you, it's extremely dense and amazing, and I hope you all try this. It's her whole life put into 5 volumes, and this person has lived a very amazing life. And so I'm going to turn it over to her now, but I just hope that you know that we're all here hoping that you'll, give us both barrels of the whole thing tonight.
All right. Well, I am so honored to be here. This is, I feel like I'm among my peers from long ago.
Yeah.
I haven't been in Santa Cruz since the 60s. And what wonderful times we had in the 60s. All right, so both barrels, I'm coming right along here. Where did Patrick Roddy go? I want to introduce my colleague and activist from San Francisco, Patrick Roddy. He had me at his conference. I'm honored that you came all this way. All right, here we go. Just briefly, for those who don't know, I started this topic in Santa Fe, New Mexico after I got back from 3 years in England. And I became friends serendipitously, you know how life is, with independent scientist Clifford Carnicom. He and his wife Carol were still living in northern New Mexico, and Clifford began collecting data when the trails were flying in the once azure skies of northern New Mexico. And I began to have breakfast with him and Carol and some other friends, and Clifford and I always hunkered down while the others talked of other sundry things. We would always talk about his latest research into the fibers that his HEPA filter was picking up. And he was collecting precipitation and analyzing it to the best of his ability and sending it off to reputable labs, of which I think there was only one. So I remember the day that he collected my blood, but he had my saliva already. I'd already looked, I'd had the red wine test, as he calls it, and I did have fibers in my body, in my saliva. And then he put my blood under his microscope, 300 power as I recall, and I watched as a creature sucked the iron out of my red blood cells. And this was pretty astonishing to me, because Clifford had assured me that if he was right, that everyone would have breathed these Morgellons creatures in. So that's what began this journey. I got much more serious at that point. And when I came back to the Pacific Northwest, Adam Parfrey at Farrell House asked me if I thought I could write a book on chemtrails. And by then, I had had enough long conversations with Clifford that I felt assured that I could, and that Clifford agreed he would back me up if I needed him. So wrote the Chemtrails Harp and the Full Spectrum Dominance of Planet Earth. It took 2 years to write and do the research and check everything. And it has done well. 7,000 copies have sold. I have not grown rich, so you can stifle that rumor. I then began immediately to write the next book, because when I was on Coast to Coast Radio, I was contacted after the show by a very important man who is practically destitute now and in terrible health, Billy Hayes. He's known as the Harp Man because he was the team leader of the guys who crawled up the phased array antennas of the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Project. So Billy said that the chemtrails and HARP were just the beginning, and that he had more information for me. So thus began a 2-year relationship, a lot of Skype conversations that I taped, and I began the Space Fence book because this is the next phase. And this will be the phase that I'm going to talk about tonight, primarily. I'll go into a little bit of history for those who are newcomers, and then we'll go from there. I'd like a long Q&A, so I'm going to ask someone to stop me let's see, I started at 7:20, so let's go an hour and a half. That would be 10 to 9. Okay? All right. This is my speech part, and then we'll go to the slides. This is my desideratum. The fact is, we are living in a strange science fiction time, not the least of which is how issues upon which the future welfare of the earth and its peoples hinge are marginalized as conspiracy theory. And scientists and doctors who step forward to tell the truth are discredited, ostracized, or killed. High-tech research, whether at university, corporate, or government labs, is funded by the military and its myriad contractors, while compartmentalization, need-to-know security clearance, and non-disclosure agreements signed in blood keep the secrets as the patent office and good old boy peer review system play gatekeeper. Divide and hide is the name of the national security game. The internet, too, is compromised, but is the only town square and educational network we have. Every day, what lies beneath the national security shroud thrown over full-spectrum dominance technologies, coming online daily at a pace that defies reason, must be now reassessed. What university could we turn to for the kind of national security state information breaking daily, especially now that our university system is part of the military-industrial intelligence complex? As a writer and student of my time, I seek to frame the context by which to interpret the pieces of a future already here. Like the Egyptian myth of Isis and Osiris that Freemasons are so fond of, the body parts of an ancient globalist dream to which we are all the subject lie scattered around us, awaiting our ability to piece it all together and interpret what is being hidden from we the people. Our school conditioning was to keep issues compartmentalized and separate from each other. Geoengineering, GMOs, genetics, Wi-Fi, 5G, Morgellons, transhumanism, vaccinations, electromagnetic targeting of individuals and populations, mind control, when the truth is they are all connected by a common globalist intent, just as CERN, ionospheric heaters, fracking wells, and wind turbines are all calibrated to work together for space fence control. The issues confronting us are separate battles in a vast, ongoing spiritual war for the future of humanity and definition of life itself. Extreme weather, water quality, immune system degeneration, creature extinctions, acid oceans, and alkalinized soil, all is occurring in tandem with the moral degeneration of society, death of the middle-class dream, rise of Agenda 2030 and its artificial intelligence, optogenetics, and neuroscience. All are scenes grown large and wireless from the elite Luciferian dream known yesterday as internationalism and today as globalism. The Earth and its atmosphere are being geoengineered, and it is not just about weather, wireless communication, drones, and directed energy weapons. It is about aiding in the breakdown of the biosphere so all of life can be genetically altered and controlled. Hopefully, a contextualized bigger picture will help you decide on your particular battle strategy. Once we are no longer fragmented and blinded by fear, we can examine the battle space drawn up by those who despise the long, slow evolution of human free will and seek instead to electromagnetically imprison us in a hive mind. May we draw courage from each other and our ability to see and share what we see. In his 2012 book, Covert Wars and Breakaway Civilizations, Joseph P. Farrell quotes General of the Army Douglas MacArthur in his farewell speech, Duty, Honor, Country, at West Point, May 12, 1962. General MacArthur definitely was privy to the big picture. I quote, "We deal now not with things of this world alone, but with the illimitable distances and as yet unfathomed mysteries of the universe. We are reaching out for a new and boundless frontier. We speak in strange terms of harnessing cosmic energy, of making winds and tides work for us, of creating unheard of synthetic materials to supplement or even replace our old standard basics, to purify seawater for our drink, of mining ocean floors for new fields of wealth and food, of disease preventatives to expand life into the hundreds of years, of controlling the weather for a more equitable distribution of heat and cold, rain and shine, of spaceships to the moon, of the primary target in war no longer limited to the armed forces of an enemy, but instead to include his civil populations, of ultimate conflict between a united human race and the sinister forces of some other planetary galaxy, of such dreams and fantasies as to make life the most exciting of all times." End of quote. The most exciting of all times may yet also prove to be the most dangerous of all times. General MacArthur was not waxing eloquent. He was already looking through the lens of the military doctrine of full-spectrum dominance, essential to a space age more about Nikola Tesla and James Clerk Maxwell than Isaac Newton and Albert Einstein. A space age not of the law of conservation of energy, but of torsion fields, rotating plasmas transducing zero-point energy, manipulation of the local fabric of time, space-time, longitudinal scalar waves, and interferometry weapons, such as we saw on 9/11, without knowing what we were looking at. Warfare is now asymmetrical, and physics is nonlinear. In near-Earth orbit and space, we have orbiting and geostationary satellites armed to the teeth with surveillance and directed energy weapons in the name of weather detection and media connectivity. Sounding rockets are spewing dusty plasma, smart dust, and sensors. And sundry experiments are going on in space right now, on the moon and the sun, all directed by and run through quantum computers engaged in their own artificial intelligence evolution counter to ours. That we live in the midst of the sentient world simulation, the so-called SWS, quietly built around us in the name of our comfort and convenience and communication, has escaped most of us, given the busyness of life. This ignorance must be corrected, as any soldier or general on a battlefield knows. It is also essential to a meaningful life to educate oneself about where and when one lives, especially when all of life, including our bodies and brains, is so vulnerable to the resonance that is under assault from wireless frequencies capable of being intentionally pulsed to achieve psychological and physical effects. Our planet's Schumann resonance of 7.83 hertz is being changed. Could this be about the singularity or transhumanist future that global elites like Ray Kurzweil and Google's Singularity University are herding us toward with RFIDs and sensors in products and people, remote neural monitoring, brain-computer interface, BCI, and humanoid robots deemed to be citizens of nations? I wanted to illuminate the whole Earth. There is enough electricity to become a second sun. Light would appear around the equator as a ring around Saturn. Nikola Tesla. Let's see if I can make this play. Here we are. We're really on a trip through the universe. I'm always surprised by how few people realize that we're traveling on the ecliptic through the universe. Plato said that it would take us 25,700 years to do one cycle in the ecliptic. So we are on a journey. That's good enough. All right. Now, where are we on the planet? We're in the troposphere, at the very bottom. Remember that 1.5 kilometers equals 1 mile. So you can translate that into miles if you wish. You see above us is the stratosphere. And the stratosphere is important because that's where a lot of the jets fly, that's where a lot of the sounding rockets are going. And that's where a lot of the detritus that we're breathing in is delivered and unloaded. Above that is the mesosphere, and then above that is the ionosphere. And beyond the ionosphere, we have the magnetosphere. The magnetosphere is more and more fascinating to me since scientist Christopher Fontenot explained to me that out of the poles of the Earth, we have the Birkeland currents. And the Birkeland currents connect us with our sun. And this is why there's so much military activity at our poles. Here's the Earth's geomagnetic field, and this is from Bruce Cathy. And Bruce Cathy was a pilot in New Zealand. If you haven't read his books on harmonics mathematics as applied to planet Earth, I highly recommend them. I had to read each one 3 times in order to understand what he was saying, but I feel it was very important, and you will be surprised by many of the things that he says. This is just a graphic, not a very good one, of what's going on planet Earth militarily. We have a lot of activities going on. You'll see those the radar installations at the bottom of the graphic. You see a lot of UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles. You see a lot of communication going on, all those dotted lines, and some of the full lines. Those are all communications, and this is what the ionized atmosphere means, is that all these wireless operations are very, very important to the military-industrial intelligence complex, and they will have them at whatever cost it is to us. This is taken from the very famous 1996 document, Weather as a Force Multiplier, Owning the Weather in 2025. And that itself is taken from a much larger document called Air Force 2025. Here you see that chemicals are definitely on the list. This was 1996. And also you see the directed energy weapons, that's DE. You see Global Weather Network, GWN. We see on here smart clouds. That's what we look at in our sky now. Those are not moisture-filled clouds. Those are chemical clouds, plasma clouds, for the most part. And you see sensors. Sensors are very important because the sensors are nanoscale. They're very, very, very tiny. And they communicate information back to fusion centers of one sort or another. And we have breathed in those sensors that they have released in the trillions in the stratosphere above our troposphere. So this is a very informative little chart if you know what you're looking for. Another really bad graphic that has aerosols in it. Aerosols in the stratosphere coming down, very tiny, namely nanoscale, nanoparticulates. And then you notice the giant reflectors at the top. Yes, there is a mirroring aspect to our atmosphere now. It isn't necessarily an instrument. It actually is our plasma can be made to reflect. And so when we see these strange things in the sky, we have to remember that there's a whole new science going on in our atmosphere. Then you see the clouds to the right, cloud seeding. That's generally done by ionizing now. It's not done with silver nitrate anymore. And then you have genetically engineered crops. They're a real nice match with a sky like the one we have. And then down here, pumping liquid carbonate dioxide, or carbonate to rocks, etc. So that gives you another graphic, and I could fill this one in with a lot of things. Let's see this, and I'd like to read first to prepare you. On May 18, 2017, NASA announced a massive human-made barrier surrounding the Earth, a, quote, humongous bubble we created out in space, end of quote, deserving of, quote, calling for a whole new geological epoch to be named after us, namely, I assume, technological man. And one of the quotes is, recently the Van Allen probes detected something strange. We always see those words now, strange, mysterious, as they monitored the activity of charged particles caught within Earth's magnetic field. These dangerous solar discharges were being kept at bay by some kind of mysterious low-frequency barrier. A certain type of communications called very low frequency, VLF or ELF, radio communications have become far more common now than in the 60s. And the team at NASA confirmed that they can influence how and where certain particles in space move about. Well, this is all of our radio frequency. This is our cell phones that we can't do without because we like the convenience and the comfort of having them. This is all the cell towers that come with the cell phones. This is the Gwen ground wave emergency network towers that have been recalibrated to work with the cell towers. This is the problem, is we have developed something around the Earth that we have never seen before. And then I'll say something after. So here's the video.
Scientists have discovered a human-made barrier around Earth, protecting against the natural particle radiation in space. They believe the bubble was formed by very low-frequency waves, or VLFs. VLFs have been found to interact with the particles in space, affecting how and where they move. VLFs are used for radio communications, including with submarines, because they can penetrate deep into the ocean. The waves can also travel far into the environment around Earth. By understanding more about how VLF transmissions help shape our space environment, we learn more about this complex region surrounding us. The more we know, the more situational awareness we have to protect our satellites from natural radiation in space.
This was basically a commercial to show the positive aspects of what is going on in our ionized sky right now with all of these nanoparticles that are being dumped on us. It's because this is the first time, to my knowledge, I have ever seen the Saturn-like ring that is on the cover of my latest book being formed around the Earth to anchor the near-Earth Tesla dome for space fence lockdown. And I assume that they wanted to start preparing us for knowledge of how they are building this nanoparticulate ring around the Earth, like Saturn's ring, like what Tesla indicated in in the first quote that I read, and that they're preparing us for accepting that, just as they've started normalizing geoengineering for us. Here's another one that we'll just watch a little bit of. Here, Lockheed Martin reveals how the Tesla dome that I just mentioned works with the ballistic missile defense system. By the way, the ballistic missile defense system is actually the SDI program, Strategic Defense Initiative, of the Reagan, Cheney, Bush years long ago, that the space fence is now the apotheosis of. While missiles may still be coming in, the United States has moved from the missile model of warfare to directed energy weapons. That was so cool. Yeah, 13-year-old fantasies. And it used to be that the military, we didn't really care. You know, I've lived longer than most of you in here. We didn't really care what the military was doing, at least a lot of people didn't, as long as they kind of did it over there. Maybe even over in some country over there. Maybe on their big, giant missile bases and their big, giant Area 51s and S4s. But now, guess what? It's in our atmosphere because they need this atmosphere for those operations. They have got to have an ionized atmosphere to run all those wireless operations. And now we are definitely in it. It's not going on over there anymore. This is our problem. So here's another dome. This was I guess, pre-programming of us in the TV series. I never saw it, but Under the Dome. And then inside our dome, this is what it looks like with our wireless technologies. If only we could see that, we might take it more seriously, right? It's really a challenge because now we're dealing with so many invisible technologies. We're going to have to really up our consciousness to see what is not there, to our eyes, our ears. This is our challenge, to take care of ourselves, our children, our grandchildren, the coming generations. We have got to learn to see into the invisible, and that's kind of what I'm doing, isn't it? I'm giving you some concepts. I'm contextualizing some concepts and some percepts that have to do with what's going on around us, so that you can take that and practice it and really begin to peer into the invisible so you understand the world we're living in now. We do not want to live an illusion. We are strong people. We want the truth, even in a national security state. Oh, remember this great book? I read it, and I thought he would never die. But he did. Yes, Brzezinski is dead. He advised 6 presidents, Republican and Democrat. He was very bipartisan. And he really had a huge effect on our world. And here he describes the technotronic era that we're now living in. It just kind of snuck up on us. Clifford Carnicom was seeing the synthetic clouds back in 2000 and analyzing them. The material of the, quote, clouds is shown to have density, form, and behavior unbecoming of water vapor. And it has all the appearances of being at least in part of a synthetic nature. This material and form of cloud has been observed on numerous occasions in Santa Fe, New Mexico during the past year and a half of the spraying program, and has always been suspect because of the unusual textures observed. The patterns and textures referred to have frequently been described as cottage cheese or tortoiseshell in nature by some observers. So what we're seeing, we need to pay attention to, because they are not really clouds. Exactly. Now I'll show this, just for new people here, that a contrail is not a chemtrail. These are chemtrails because it's like it lasts and then fans out into a cirrus cloud cover, whereas the contrail, which is very rare now, you rarely see a contrail, is water vapor at altitude. So you'll see a little teeny weeny guy at the top there. There he is. That's much more like a contrail. Before, during, and after. We all know what this looks like. We've seen this many, many times. Here is testimony from the very famous, I think it's excellent, Shasta County Board of Supervisors. Some of you may have even been there. You may even see yourselves in this video. I'm only going to play a little bit because it's long, but these are pilots, physicians, and scientists, some of whom I even know, I'm privileged to know, talking about and testifying before the Board of Supervisors.
Aircraft making a condensation trail is very similar in many ways to when you go outside on a cold day and exhale. you create a condensation trail. That little cloud is a condensation trail. Now, if you take a 2-mile walk on a cold day, and you can turn around and you can see your condensation trail tracking all the way back for 2 miles. That's how crazy it is to think that what we're looking in the sky is actually condensation trails.
The contrails, not the chemical, the contrails occur because of cold air, minus 30. It takes a high altitude, around 30,000 feet plus. There's carbon dioxide and water vapor in that exhaust. That turns to ice crystals, and that's what you see, the white stream behind it. Those white crystals of ice warm up, dissolve, and the smoke goes away. And it never lasts more than a minute. What we're seeing now, and I first could not believe it, and I started looking at the skies, and these are not normal. They're not natural. There's something going on. I don't know who it is or why they're doing it. All I can testify is it's not natural and it's not normal. It's got to be some outside influence doing that. Thank you.
I'm here to give you testimony that chemtrails, they're not contrails, are indeed real. They're spraying almost every day. I watch the clouds and watch the spraying program going on. I want to tell you that we're in very great danger from the pollution that's coming down over us. And we've been led astray by the military-industrial complex, and they're responsible for the cloud's creation and weather manipulation programs. They're dark operations. That's why they're not out in the media.
I look around and I see people are starting to look up and see this. Many times I've spoken about chemtrails, and I get this blank look on my face. What are you talking about? I'm saying, look up. As a pilot, before I fly, I look up. And so, boy, they're really out there working.
When you look up at the sun and you see a white haze, that is aluminum floating in the air right now, and it's coming from the aircraft.
There's a huge amount of aluminum being found because these sprays have aluminum, strontium, barium, manganese. And there's a lot of argument that aluminum is very common to be found. But aluminum is only common in a bonded form. It's not common in a free form, and we're finding high rates of free aluminum in the soil, which is not natural.
The metal compounds that are being used are environmentally dangerous. We need to be monitoring them. We need to be testing them.
Okay, these previous guys, I've watched exactly what they do, and yes, they are correct. I've seen exactly the same stuff, so ditto marks on those. You want some figures? Okay, latest water test, tested the rain. 13,100 micrograms per liter of aluminum in the rain in 2013. Normally, it should be 0. So 13,100 is pretty damn much, folks. It used to be 0, then it was 100s in the 2000s, and then since 2010, it's into the 1,000s and the latest 13,100. In the snow on Mount Shasta, pristine Mount Shasta, 61,000 micrograms per liter, 4 times the amount that is found in the soil up there. Where in the hell is this stuff coming from if it's not coming from the soil?
We have clouds in the sky we've never seen before. Almost every day I'm seeing clouds I've never seen before. And NASA has been even named a few of these new clouds. It's really interesting, but NASA is a corporation. I want you to know that.
NASA has also conducted a research program in what they call metallized fuels. We're actually putting aluminum oxide right in the fuel because it has 2 atoms of aluminum and 3 atoms of oxygen. So during the combustion process, it releases all that oxygen and dramatically increases efficiency, but it leaves the aluminum in the air.
We got things coming from sky down, and it's a huge, huge problem. Because as it comes down, what happens is a couple of things. Is that it actually is in our air, we breathe it. And as we breathe it, it's actually going to go up to our nostrils, into our brain, easiest access to our brain frontal lobe. The contaminants that have been identified, which already been mentioned, are aluminum. Aluminum is the #1 free radical generator to the brain to cause early apoptosis, which is early death of brain, and it begins to set off the scar tissue, which we call the amygdalin, which is part of the chemical matrix related to Alzheimer's.
I'm a neurologist practicing in Reading for 17 years, and in the past 5 years, I've seen the number of patients with Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's, and other neurodegenerative diseases tremendously increase. almost quadruple.
I became interested in chemtrails about 8 years ago when I was in Hawaii, and the Hawaiians are really being very vocal about it. I concur about the increasing number of Alzheimer's. They have been able to take the aluminum and micronize it, which means it'll stay up longer. But it also means, and I don't know if any of you have noticed a metallic taste in your mouth when they're spraying, but you inhale that, it goes up through your cribriform plate and through your sinuses and into the brain.
As you heard, to spray nanoparticles, very small particles. These nanoparticles, they basically trigger a programmed cell death in the brain, and that is the ultimate path we see in Alzheimer's.
So cell death in the brain, this is the problem with the aluminum. Let's talk later, remind me, maybe during the Q&A, let's talk about heavy metal detox. Okay, just, I'm so tired of this, but I'm going to say it anyway, because there might be someone who missed it. The term chemtrails, I'm so grateful to the U.S. Air Force for that term. I don't know why they have blamed us for using it, given that they're the ones who originated it. And that was here in the Air Force Academy chemistry manual for pilots to be. And it was also in the original HARP executive summary in 1990. Just reading down at the bottom, it has been proposed to release large clouds of barium in the magnetosphere so that photoionization will increase the cold plasma density, thereby producing electron precipitation through enhanced Whistler mode interaction, Alvin waves. Barium is the second most common chemtrail ingredient. Now, this is the other delivery system I just want to stress. You have the chemical trails of the jets, and whether or not you are a proponent of the idea that it's all coming from the combustion chamber of the jet, or if it's a supplementary system along with the combustion chamber, JP8 detritus coming out, it doesn't really matter to me. The sounding rocket launches are also a delivery system, and the chemical signature of its composition in fuel is identical to that of the jets. So what I'm saying is this is all supposed to work together. And these rockets, these sounding rockets, and all sounding means, sounding is a nautical term of a way to measure something in the sea. This is a way these rockets go up to measure various things in the stratosphere. So they're that beautiful sunset that some people think is so lovely. All I see is chemicals, and I'm concerned. But here's another one. You might see one like this. So again, we're not looking at UFOs or anything like that. We're really looking at rocket chemical flotsam and jetsam as it's heading spaceward. So let's see this. This is another way of feeding storms, and this is the WSAC, the wet surface air cooler technology that is on the ocean and also on land from plants, including nuclear plants. So that's this is what it might look like from up top if we were looking down onto, say, the South Pacific of the ship activity there, the ship tracks. And what those do is they're mainly condensation, seawater condensing into something to feed particulate matter up into the chemical trails that are descending, and this is ascending. When storm systems are coming off the South Pacific and there is manipulation ventilation of them, particularly to bypass California so you don't get any moisture and mess up their experiments. Now whoopee, now we're going to have invisible delivery systems.
An aircraft comprising a gas turbine engine that exhausts a plume of gases in use. The aircraft comprises an ultrasound generator having an ultrasound actuator and a waveguide to direct ultrasonic waves at the exhaust plume to avoid the formation of contrails.
So I don't know what to say about that. I don't know if you're going to see much of anything except that you're going to be really happy there's no chemtrails, but the sky's going to look just the same as it always has. So here's my chart. I trot this out every time. This is from Clifford Carnicom from 2005 in his Aerosol Crimes film, which is still good to see. These are the operations that the ionized sky and the continued ionizing of the sky every day with chemical trails is dedicated to. These are all military operations, also intelligence operations, because I don't see much difference between the two anymore. And so you begin with weather engineering, or as they call it, geoengineering. And this is important because it's not just important to control the weather so that you can create profit motivation for the big, deep pockets that are supporting these programs, in that every disaster will perhaps make them richer because they've bought weather derivatives, having received inside information before the disaster ever happened, and then they're able to really see this as a wonderful thing for themselves, along with the military getting a lot of benefit out of it. But the weather engineering also creates energy. You know that because you've seen a lightning storm. And when there's a lightning storm, energy is charged, and electrostatic energy is added to the composition of the atmosphere in the area. So it's a way of producing energy and keeping the atmosphere ionized and energized for wireless operations. Okay, from that then, and all the rest of these operations really depend on that first one. Without the weather engineering, if we had the fantasy that we could shut this down, the first thing we'd want to shut down would be the weather engineering, because everything else is going to collapse without it. Chemical, electromagnetic, atmospheric operations are going on. I'm not going to go into that. It's complex, but it's very interesting. Basically, it's plasma physics, and I'm getting really excited about learning about that. Planetary geophysical operations. Santa Rosa may have been one of those. I would definitely put Santa Rosa in that context, that it's being changed in some way for various agendas of various power blocks. Then you have directed energy weapons operation, you have surveillance neural operations, and you have biological transhumanism operation. These three I will go deeply in the book I've just started. It's the last one I'm going to write in this series. It's on synthetic biology. And all three of those share a lot in common. So you have the top three are planetary, and the bottom three are directly targeting us. Okay. Oh, climate mafia, yes. There they are, all of our friends. And then a little bit on HAARP. Some of you may not know what HAARP is, the High Frequency Active Aurora Research Project. Very important because some amazing experiments were done there with a very powerful ionospheric heater with the phased array there. And that really went on from the late 90s, the mid-90s, I would say, the mid-90s to 2013. The experimentation was shut down then, and there was a lot of talk as to what was going to happen to HAARP. was going to be torn down. We don't need it anymore. I knew that was a lie. No way are they going to tear down an installation like that. Then there was talk about turning it over to the University of Alaska at Fairbanks, and that has been done, actually. But I told you that the university system, in my introduction, the university system has been co-opted and taken hostage by military grant money. So I assumed that it was still a government weapon, and it was being calibrated to work with the other ionospheric heaters in the world, of which there are now many. Used to be only half a dozen before HAARP. There was one in Norway, there was one in Puerto Rico, there was one in here, there, and there. But now we have lots of them because they're mobile and they're smaller, and the system is completely done. So they all work together because they're calibrated to work together. So that's HAARP. And then let's just see how it works. Basically, a simple guide here. They're zapping, they're sending radio frequency, microwave energy up to the ionosphere, heating up the ionosphere to the point where it actually bubbles out into space. And I don't know what will happen if it ever breaks. And then those ions that are now charged by the heat coming from ionospheric heaters down here comes down the waveguides that are up there that have to do with the Birkeland currents. And when they get down to our atmosphere, we can then use them for a variety of projects. And that's kind of how it works in a simplified graphic. Here, I just want to call your attention to this paper from the Journal of Geophysical Research about HAARP. I'll just read a couple of sentences. Extremely low frequency, very low frequency radio waves are difficult to generate with conventional antennas. Ionospheric high-frequency heating facilities generate ELF, VLF waves via modulated heating of the lower atmosphere, lower ionosphere. High-frequency heating of the ionosphere changes the lower ionospheric conductivity, which in the presence of natural currents such as the auroral electrojet creates an antenna in the sky when heating is modulated at ELF, VLF frequencies. This is the condition of our atmosphere. Here, I'm just going to bring up earthquakes really quickly because one of the most famous things that these ionospheric heaters can do very easily is be charged up, and with usually just two beams from them crossing over a target area, an earthquake can be created with ELFs. Here's the little film that goes with that, how easy it is to create an earthquake.
Experienced the power of ELF waves firsthand back in the 1980s. He was hired by an energy company to locate oil and gas using the same kind of ELF waves at much lower frequencies to carry out his search. It's a process called Earth tomography. But during one particular incident, Dr. Agnew believes his use of HAARP-like ELF waves accidentally triggered an earthquake.
It was in the spring of 1987 we arrived in Roseburg, Oregon to use our ELF technology to search for oil and gas. Setting up that day, we had a little bit different results than we expected because the instant that we energized it, there was between a 4 and 4.5 on the Richter scale earthquake that occurred. We were so amazed about what seemed to be cause and effect. We get to an area that has a high propensity for earthquakes in an area known as the megathrust of the Pacific Northwest. We turn it on and an earthquake occurs.
Dr. Agnew demonstrates how he may have triggered the quake.
This is a scale model of what the area looked like in Oregon when we scanned for oil and gas in 1987. This strata right here represents the megathrust area underneath the ground. The rock represents the potential energy set up in the ground from a tectonic stress. What we're going to do is introduce ELF waves and demonstrate that it can in fact trigger an earthquake.
In this case, Dr. Agnew is using a stereo speaker to produce the ELF waves needed for his demonstration.
ELF waves, extremely low frequency waves, are just like a subwoofer. In your car, you can actually feel the vibrations through your body. ELF waves are the same way. They vibrate the earth, and at right resonant frequencies, they can have devastating effects.
When the speaker is activated, ELF waves begin to emit. Tiny vibrations in the sand are detected. Then a few seconds later, the rock representing the fault line shifts.
As you can see, in a very few seconds, the resonant frequency built up in our model released the potential energy in the rock. That concussion, on a real scale, would have been felt for 100 miles.
So, how about that? And that can be done with also infrasound, right? The infrasound. And that would be the answer to many of the earthquakes that we have heard of going on. Here's a graphic I like. This is about scalar technology, which is what all this technology does. It's not just electromagnetic waves, ELF waves or otherwise, that are culpable in this picture of what's going on in our atmosphere. The scalar waves, the scalar wave technology, which is all that Tesla was really interested in, is utilized liberally. So it behooves us to learn how scalar technology is used as a weapon. You see how the two beams are meeting over the target area. This would be my picture of 9/11. This would be my picture of Fukushima. This technology is very important to study, and I would recommend Lieutenant Colonel Tom Bearden and Konstantin Meil in Europe, who is considered to be the Tesla of our era. Now back to HAARP, just to hear the Air Force admit that all they wanted was to control the ionosphere. I like this. I feel good every time I hear this.
Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all of you this morning. Very interesting. I wanted to ask a couple questions here about HAARP, the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. Several of you at the table have a little bit of a piece here. As you know, this is located up in Alaska. It's currently funded by the Air Force Research Lab. It was formerly funded by the Office of Naval Research. One of the prime customers is DARPA, which is currently running experiments at the facilities here. So questions to several of you this morning. I'm told by the president of the University of Alaska that the Air Force has pulled its support for the facility, and they're taking steps to demolish it or take it down this summer. He's making the argument that there is other opportunities for us, and is trying to find a path where the university might be able to take title to the facility. I'd like to start with you, Dr. Prabhakar. I understand that a lot of folks here on the committee probably don't understand what HAARP does. I think most Alaskans don't really know what HAARP does or why the agency is involved in it. So a very brief explanation, and then a more direct question. Would you be disappointed, or would you lose something if HAARP were to go away?
Senator Murkowski, as I think you know, one of our programs has been using the HAARP facility for the research that it's pursuing. And my understanding is that we did get value out of that interaction. The P in DARPA is projects, and we're not in the business of doing the same thing forever. And so very naturally, as we conclude that work, we're going to move on to other topics. So it's not an ongoing need for DARPA, despite the fact that we had actually gotten some good value out of that infrastructure in the past.
Understood. Then to Dr. Walker and Mr. Schaefer then, Dr. Walker, your agency is currently running the facility. I've mentioned that it's our understanding through the president of UAF that the plans are to move forward and demolish the facility this summer. So the question to you is that accurate? Can you explain why? And then perhaps to both you and Mr. Schaefer, is there any benefit in exploring a potential relationship with the University of Alaska to perhaps take over the HARP?
Yeah, thank you, Senator. The Air Force has gotten great value out of HARP in the past. We took over from the Navy and managed it and actually did a number of experiment campaigns up there and have finished our work that we're interested in doing up there. We've moving on to other ways of managing the ionosphere, which the HARP was really designed to do, was to inject energy into the ionosphere, be able to actually control it. But that work has been completed.
Rest my case. And what this meant is that they were turning it over to a civilian agency, but certainly it would still continue to be used. The question was, for me, was it going to be used at the power that it was used for the experiments? And Billy Hayes, the tower erector, the HARP man, my advisor for the Space Fence book, said that they had recalibrated it. But when the 5 hurricanes were parked off of the coast, the east coast of the United States, and I mean parked, they were all 5 going as though 5 balls were in the air. Quite a feat, I had to admit. They must have had quite a few ionospheric heaters involved in that one operation. When that happened, Billy went into grand mal seizures, and because of his past, he knew that his own body resonates to the frequencies of HARP, and he knew they had fired it up at full power at that point. So I'm assuming that HARP is certainly not mothballed, but is used in large operations, and that makes sense because it was the most powerful ionospheric heater, but now we have another one. I'm so happy we have another one. IceCat 3D. Yeah, Dutch sense. He's good. Da, 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 da. And I'm showing this just to say to you that this technology is not going to go away. It's just getting started. And this all has to do with space operations from the Earth. Yes, and that's in Norway, by the way. All right, then the Eldal, laser-developed atmospheric lens, force shield, unveiled combat. Imagine that space wars are going on in space, in all the different stratosphere, mesosphere, wherever, and we have this capability. Because we have plasma eyes, the atmosphere, we can actually build these things now with the plasma that is already free-floating in the stratosphere and the troposphere. Plasma is the 4th state of matter, sorry. It's both a gas and a fire. Choo, choo, choo. Now, I don't know if any of you have seen the solar simulator up in the stratosphere. Have you seen a sun that looks like our sun but has sort of hexagonal forms in it? That actually is a solar simulator, and we also have a lunar simulator up there, and China does too. Now this is laser. So for those who have studied the Santa Rosa fires, this is one of the possibilities, is the use of a laser. I mean, who needs video games when you can have this good stuff? This is Jim Lee, climateviewer.com. And I'll just play a little bit of Jim. He has an interesting idea that the L-Doll is actually a HARP
Welcome, Climate
rebranded.
Viewers. My name is Jim Lee from Climate Viewer News. It is January 16th, 2017, and I have an explosive story for you today. The future of spying Earth's atmosphere can be turned into a massive surveillance system using lasers, scientists discover. Now, they're talking about an atmospheric lens, using lasers to create an atmospheric lens to spy on people. And this system is called the Laser Developed Atmospheric Lens. Where have I heard this before? It sounds a lot like HARP. But let's get into that technology real quick. Atmospheric thermal lensing and laser resonators. Anybody knows anything about me knows my middle name is Resonated. And that this technology was published back in 1995 here. And there's a paywall here, so I went and found a PDF for you. Links will be in the details. So atmospheric thermal lensing and laser resonators, right there, you can read all about it, but it's generally the same idea as what we've seen with HARP. So what are we talking about? We're talking about geophysical warfare. Others are engaging in even an eco-type of terrorism whereby they can alter the climate, set off earthquakes, volcanoes remotely through the use of electromagnetic waves. And that was Secretary of Defense William Cohen speaking at the Terrorism, Weapons of Mass Destruction and U.S. Strategy, Sam Nunn Policy Forum in 1997. Nothing to shake a stick at there. And what are we talking about? This artificial ionospheric mirror. We are over here on climateviewer.com/HARP. And you scroll right down here to Why Heat the Ionosphere. It says create an artificial ionospheric mirror. And I have that for you over here on my script. And you can come look at it. It's straight from the military. This is ARCO Technologies and the military going physics studies in artificial ionospheric mirror related phenomena, how it really works and what they say about it. And this was published in 1990. And what we're talking about is ionospheric mirrors created by ionospheric heaters. So these heaters are all over the globe. This is climateviewer.org. If you click on right here, electromagnetic, and then click on ionospheric heaters, it'll put a little check mark right there, and then click this expand tree right here, and you can see each one around the globe, and it'll actually fly you to them. So if you want to go to HARP, it'll fly you over there, and then you can fly to the next.
It's an amazing interactive
but
map.
These are all over the globe. They've been around since actually the 70s, with Arecibo's first version, but
oh, he's repeating me now. Stop. All right, so that's Jim Lee. I recommend his site, climateviewer.com, for a lot of information. Here's Rosalie Bertell. She's a hero of mine. She's now dead. She was an epidemiologist. She wrote a book called Planet Earth, The Latest Weapon of War, a critical study into the military and the environment. It never took off. I can't imagine why not. And she said the ability of the HARP Space Lab rocket combination to deliver very large amounts of energy comparable to a nuclear bomb anywhere on Earth via laser and particle beams is frightening. Yes, it is. Here's one of the bad guys I wanted to add to the climate mafia. In my opinion, this agency now has more power than the NSA, the National Security Agency. This is the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, NGA. They will be in charge of everything that has to do with space situational awareness and whatever's happening with us on planet Earth. I'm going to skip this because I got criticized last night for not having this quote right, and he was right. Bye-bye. Okay, now, we're at an important part. I'm going to try to go quickly through this. As I said, the geoengineering is now being normalized, and that's very important. I think that they realized that the attempt to keep the conspiracy theory tinfoil hat thing going much longer was probably getting a little thin. So it was time to say that geoengineering now really has to happen. And gee whiz, I'm really sorry, but we're going to start it now. And of course, that was a lie. And they trotted out David Keith, the famous liar, and you know, Bill Gates' boy. So that has begun. And let's keep that in mind, because all sorts of things happened right after that started happening. Jack Kruse, he's one of the science guys that I like on the internet, and he sends me a lot of stuff. The deception of solar radiation management, Solar Shield, is quite varied in many areas of science, politics, warfare, communication, and technology industries today. Human stock markets have created these industries, and now the entire human system of society is based upon these technologies. This is why the unripe mind blames food for man's current ills and fails to make the links back to altered light spectrums caused by man's creations. All food takes the lead from photosynthesis and the proper solar connections and spectral density. He who controls the electromagnetic spectrum on Earth controls the living things on the surface of the planet. This is true. So let's not read the last part. I don't like it. All right. The other thing that happened right after the geoengineering started being normalized was chemtrails were recognized as a new kind of cloud. And they were called, they had to have a Latin term or it wouldn't be official. So it's called Cirrus contralis. You can't make these things up. And children are now subjected to all sorts of science lessons about the new clouds. We don't have those old puffy things anymore. And then we see this photo. And right away, we don't tie it to the clouds. Maybe only Elana does. Because something is going on here, something mysterious, a statement is being made. And it reminded me immediately of this. So I was interested, and I looked into it. On May 22nd, 2017, we saw this extraordinary photo on the front page of the New York Times. 5 months later, in October, the Future Investment Initiative is held in Riyadh, at which it is announced that the humanoid robot, Sophia, has been granted Saudi Arabian citizenship. As I speak, a violent purge is going on in the House of Saud. I haven't really checked into that lately. And then let's take a peek at Sophia. There's Sauron. Sophia, first ever robot citizen. Here's what I say about this. Robot Sophia's Saudi citizenship announces the reign of artificial intelligence. Two corporations come immediately to mind when I think of artificial intelligence. The big data analyst Palantir with Peter Thiel, and the adiabatic quantum computer D-Wave, both apparently funded by, wait for it, the CIA's investment arm of In-Q-Tel. Excepting the U.S. Army, which prefers a Raytheon made AI system, every major U.S. military and intelligence agency, including Lockheed Martin, NASA, Google, CERN, etc., uses the D-Wave computer. A Palantir is a seeing stone, for those who don't know. I actually didn't know. In J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings, a dark orb used by Saruman to be able to see in darkness or blinding light. Palantir means one that sees from afar, a mythical instrument of omnipotence. Let's take another look at that Trump photo. Oh, omnipotence. Well, all right. Palantir, the special ops tech giant that wields as much real-world power as Google, and yet we never hear about it. In fact, very interesting, Palantir has a SCIF on a back street, and I didn't know what an SCIF is. It is a sensitive compartmentalized information facility. Palantir has one on a back street in Palo Alto, California. Palantir says its building, quote, must be built to be resistant to attempts to access the information within. The network must be air-gapped from the public internet to prevent information leakage. So, national security. And that's a corporation, obviously a military corporation. Okay, there's Tom Cruise in, what was the name of that film? Yeah. Yeah, based on a Philip K. Dick story, right? Yeah. Okay, D-Wave computer. Oh, we have to hear Geordie Rose. This is too good. Some of you have already heard it, but I can't hear it enough.
Difference between the machines we build and conventional computers. This is what they look like. There are two of them. These are from our lab in Burnaby in British Columbia. From the outside, they look like giant black monoliths, big metal boxes. So if you have the opportunity to stand next to one of these machines, it is an awe-inspiring thing, at least for me. It feels like an altar to an alien god.
Ooh. Thanks, Geordie. Okay, so the next thing that happened, I mean, these things were coming hot and heavy, one after the other, and I don't know, I was just lucid those days. I could see that they all fit together. If artificial intelligence is already running space fence operations, are laser and particle beam Star Wars drills going on in space? On June 17, 2017, a Russian AMC-9 satellite in geostationary orbit 36,000 kilometers above the Earth's surface lost contact with its Luxembourg-based operator and began drifting and breaking up. As it broke up, radar revealed 3 orb-like objects flying in triangular formation near the satellite with another orb trailing aft. Media concentrated on the debris and not on the possibility that the satellite had broken up because it had been attacked. Am I certain of that? No. But is it possible? Yes. Definitely yes. And I don't know if we can hear anything here. No, I don't want to do that. All right, then next, same period of time, we're just going one boom, boom, boom after another, July 2017. 2 weeks after the AMC-9 satellite breakup during Independence Day weekend, President Trump relaunched the National Space Council that had guided NASA from 1958 to 1973, and again from 1989 to 1993. 2 weeks after that, a proposal to create a Space Corps as a 6th military branch was tucked into the monster NDAA bill. The proposal was defeated in the Senate, and the NDAA itself was revised to eliminate the Defense Space Council and Deputy Chief of Staff for Space Operations, and giving over to the U.S. Air Force sole authority over U.S. Space Command. The chairman and ranking member of the House Armed Services Strategic Forces Subcommittee was adamant that the U.S. national security space enterprise not, quote, continue to drift toward a space Pearl Harbor, end of quote. I want to go on record as saying that that could have been a pre-programming phrase. And we will see, we will see. All of the foregoing occurred in the first few months of President Trump's presidency. Why? Because Space Fence lockdown, after 2 decades of experimentation, it went black as the SDI program back in the Reagan era. It was still black under Clinton, and then it just sort of dwindled and disappeared, but it went black, and now it has come as the Space Fence lockdown. And it is now going operational, and I maintain that the hands on the globe, like Saruman, all the way to this, was the announcement to those who are in the in crowd that the Space Fence is now operational. Right. And here we are. Let's see what Lockheed Martin says about the Space Fence. Better than video games. All right, thank you. Thank you. Lockheed Martin is in charge of the Space Fence,
Space
by the way.
is no longer a vast, empty void. Unprecedented quantities of new satellites, derelict satellites, and debris litter the skies, posing an imminent threat to America's space assets. Lockheed Martin's Space Fence system is a ground-based system of S-band radars designed to greatly enhance the Air Force space surveillance network. It provides unprecedented sensitivity, coverage, and tracking accuracy, and contributes to key mission threads with the ability to detect, track, and catalog small objects in low Earth orbit, medium Earth orbit, and geosynchronous orbit. In a word, Space Fence will revolutionize space situational awareness.
An incredible
It offers
surveillance,
assured
beyond
surveillance
belief.
coverage for improved custody and features the capability to develop long arc tracks for accurate initial orbit determination and differential correction, while simultaneously maintaining a persistent surveillance volume. In today's ever-expanding space environment, Space Fence improves the accuracy and timeliness for association, propagation, and orbit improvement. It features an open architecture net-centric design. The closely coupled radar signal processing and mission processing suite improves accuracy, discrimination, and timeliness for detection of closely spaced objects, breakups, maneuvers, lost object location, launch, attitude change, and conjunction assessment. Space Fence not only tracks objects, but can precisely determine their projected orbit. This allows operators to reconstruct recent events, such as collisions or satellite breakups, and accurately predict future events. For high-interest objects, a microfence can be electronically constructed to gather more track data, focusing radar resources specifically on that object, providing more timely and accurate information. The Space Fence system includes up to 2 minimally manned radar sites, mission processing, and the system operations functionality. Each radar site features a design boasting closely spaced but separate transmit and receive arrays that are mission optimized for high availability and low lifetime support costs, including prime power. The dual aperture configuration offers efficiency and affordability.
Kwajalein is
Each
in
array
the
is
Marshall
environmentally
Islands.
protected by a pressurized, electronically transparent radome. The arrays are continuously calibrated in the background, providing a higher degree of accuracy. Transmit and receive LRUs can be replaced while the radar is operating. The arrays, as well as the signal and mission processing suites, are fully scalable to fit any mission design. Array scalability is delivered using 3 low-cost, highly producible building blocks which permit easy growth capability. And by optimizing a second site with a smaller array and margin for future capability growth, the radar sites are cost-effective as well as powerful.
Lucky Australia.
As the Earth spins, the location of these radar sites provides assured coverage. And this coverage closes current coverage gaps, particularly in the southern hemisphere. The Space Fence system is net-centric and seamlessly integrated into the existing space surveillance network, providing services to external users such as JSPOC and coordinating handoffs to other SSN sites. It is designed for efficiency and full capability while minimizing bandwidth needs. The Space Fence system features a unique mission processor that utilizes the Air Force Space Command's A9 Astro Standards algorithms for high-confidence space track processing, low risk, and cost-effectiveness. The radar architecture is based on digital beamforming. This capability permits tremendous user-defined flexibility to customize volume surveillance and track sectors instantaneously without impacting routine surveillance functions. It has simultaneous search and track functions, detects significant UCTs, breakups, and maneuvers, and the flexible design supports operational resource allocation. Many of these operations are automated through machine-to-machine interfaces. This automation, along with user-defined operational picture displays, contextual GUIs, and unqueued LEO surveillance, reduces operator burden.
Artificial intelligence.
The Space Fence team is comprised of Lockheed Martin, as well as AMEC, and General Dynamics Satcom Technologies. This partnership offers best-of-brand S-band radar, mission system and orbital mechanics, and construction expertise with superior responsiveness and transparency.
Transparency. So if you unlocked all those flashy terms, you would come up with artificial intelligence. The Space Fence will be run by AI. And here, the truth is that the Space Fence is about far more than space debris, satellites, and rockets. In fact, it is CNN's word restrung that points to the truth of what it is about. Like Jade Helm, the military exercise in the American Southwest in 2015. Some of you may remember, or you can pull it from the memory hole. The Space Fence is about global network-centric warfare, NCW, under AI in order to master the human domain. Be under no illusion that the Space Fence may be able to point its sensors and its eyes toward space in order to see where all the debris is to keep our weaponized satellites safe, but it also has the ability to turn that very same eye on planet Earth. And it will be fed lots of information, especially now that you and I have breathed in masses of sensors on a nanoscale that are communicating information 24/7 to various fusion centers that are feeding the AI that is now up and running. So I'm going to stop there because we're going to have a good Q&A, and I want to make sure you have plenty of time to ask questions. All right, thank you very much.
Okay, if you want to ask a question, please raise your hands, and I will try to keep track of the questions as we go along, and please speak into the microphone so that your question goes onto the video of Lana's presentation. So I've got a gentleman over here.
He's going to be in charge.
Hi, Lana. Sean Gardner. How you doing?
Hey, Sean. Sorry I missed dinner.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. So one question. I got two questions. First one, we didn't talk about NEXRAD. So locally, I know we didn't touch a lot on the weather or anything, but the chemtrails do affect the weather, and NEXRAD seriously affects the weather. So I just want to point that out to people. Right here on Mount Umunham, there is a major NEXRAD right there. So it's a serious thing. People should really look into that. And then, so we kind of spoke privately. But I want to know your thoughts on what, if people could have a technology to actually neutralize the chemtrails, to actually maybe neutralize the NEXRADs, and to maybe even neutralize HARP. And Billy Hayes has been on video and basically says that, yeah, these devices are more powerful. So it's a pretty powerful statement, but it is true, yeah.
So, all right, so Sean, do you want me to address the NEXRADs? Or, yeah, because regarding the NEXRADs, yes, they are, in my mind, they are used to guide the weather systems that are being moved and engineered across the country. We have NEXRADs. They look like, NEXRAD stands for Next Generation Radar. And they are these big golf ball looking things that you will often see on university campuses, near radio stations, and they are all across the country. They're supposedly for communications, et cetera, but really they are used to move storm systems across the United States. And I spent a great deal of time on them in the Chemtrails HARP book, and I also cover them in the Space Fence book. Regarding the technology that could undermine these implements that are on the ground-based system of the Space Fence, and they are considerable. I mean, the NEXRADs, the wind farms, the fracking wells, the WSAC smokestacks of factories that also feed storms, laser installations like the amazing Starfire laser system. All of these and more, including the ionospheric heaters, radar installations on military bases, etc. All of these are part of the feeding mechanism, ground-based mechanism that keeps everything in the ionized from the ground up and the air down for Space Fence lockdown, what I call Space Fence lockdown. What can ameliorate local systems is the Wilhelm Reich technology. And I know that I can't remember if it's chapter 3 or 4, but I talk about ether. And you need to understand ether. Ether is another term for the orgone. That was the term that Wilhelm Reich came up with. And the ether is really the antithesis of electromagnetics. Ether serves life. Electromagnetics serves death in its signature existence. It isn't that you can't use some electromagnetic technologies, such as I'm thinking right now of Royal Rife and what he was able to do with his beam technology. He would figure out the signature frequency of cancer cells, and he would aim that beam of his at those cancer cells and kill them dead. And of course, that's why he was ruined and wrecked, the same as Reich was, the same as Tesla, the same as John Worrell Keely in Philadelphia at the end of the 19th century. So it is very risky to be someone who supports life now. We have a lot of death lovers running our society. And I have a cloudbuster outside what I call my sleep window. My tree loves it. The tree outside my sleep window loves it too. And yes, I do know it works because I understand how ether can be taken from the very currents of life on the planet and directed in certain directions to completely obliterate the electromagnetic weapon that is being used against us.
So I have a device here. You guys want me to do this? It's Trevor James Constable. Trevor James Constable. And basically he studied Reich's work, furthered that knowledge, built translators. This translator right here was built by a gentleman in the UK. I'm not going to say his name. I will give my card to anybody that wants to learn about this technology. I'm happy to teach them. But this translator right here will clear 10 to 20 square miles when it's pointed up vertically. It works quantumly. I've taken bigger translators from my house in San Jose and cleared other areas. I've done lots of things. We're able to bring the weather systems back in. It's going to be a little bit mind-blowing for people, but the drought in California can be contributed to these devices since they've been started to use in California in August 2016. It's powerful stuff what I'm telling you here. And I'd like Elana to have this device because I want Elana to understand the power of this thing so that the conversation can move into the solution-based field. Yeah, thank you.
Bravo, bravo. Great. There was a... Oh, you're in charge, yes.
Yes, thank you. Hi, I'm Monica McGuire. Several big questions. You promised that you would talk to us about heavy metal detox. I'm a health coach, and I would like to hear about that. I have been following this from my own desires since about 1980, looking up at clouds and seeing they were changing. One of the things I've really noticed is the slate blue color of the sky, and I would love to know what you know about that. Because that's on the days where there aren't as many chemtrails. We usually get the slate blue. And then you just mentioned this device outside your window. Anything you can give us on that, please? Sorry, there's several things I made notes of. I guess that's enough to ask you for now. But they encapsulate that I, as a health coach, have really played with how I notice my body reacts to things. And I had dreams of fibers coming out of my feet as a teenager, and I know people who have gone through extreme things like that in this county and nearby, and I have played with eating foods despite knowing that they're being rained on by the chemtrails, because I figure if they are foods that birds drop in our yards, that's the safer thing, that's going to work in our biology more healthfully than other things. Other people have said, oh, you're crazy, you don't want to do that, and I've been playing with this, but intention is so much, right? So if you can speak to some of those aspects, including all of us who love our organic gardens and being outside and seeing the chemtrails overhead, should we be using umbrellas? Is that ridiculous? What's possible? What's good? What are the maximum detox things we can do with all the different water sources? Wood. Yeah.
Well, I'll start the conversation, but you're doing the right thing in that you're experimenting. You're looking through your own perceptions. This is how this has all come about, is they have mediated our perceptions. They have made it so we don't believe anything that we see, anything that we intuit, because we need the experts to tell us. We need somebody else to tell us. We need to see it on television first. We need to read it in the New York Times first. This is how we have been defeated. And we have to return to our perceptions, even if our perceptions are not right. We're going to be experimenting. And I'm involved in a community of the anti-chemtrails, anti-geoengineering movement on the internet. Through Facebook. I have 2 Facebook sites that are closed. You have to ask for membership, but I try to really take care of that site, because what we're looking for is the information of citizen journalists, citizen experimenters who are sharing what they're finding, so that we can all put our heads together, pool our knowledge, and understand how we can ameliorate this situation for all of us. Now, the heavy metals, I have to recommend Tony Pantalaresco. P-A-N-T-A-L-E-R, oh wait, T-A, wait a minute. No, I couldn't say his name for five radio shows. Now I can at least say it. Pantaleresco, Tony Pantalaresco in Ontario, Canada. Tony has Morgellons, and he is sharing everything that he's doing, and he's very scientifically apt. He's using electromagnetics. He's using magnets. He's using chemical signatures, everything. So here's what I'm doing. I am taking, every week, I take a bath with 1 cup of Epsom salt, 1 cup of sea salt, 1 cup of borax. And what happens is the borax cuts through what's known as biofilm. We all have biofilm on us now. It's just the amalgam that it makes with our skin. You can't see it. Sometimes you can rub it off and you'll feel it. It's sort of waxy. It's sort of like polymer. But the borax will cut through that, and then the Epsom salts and the sea salt will create an electrostatic tension that the metals and nanoparticles will respond to, and they will come out and probably sit on the surface of the water. Now, some people have much more coming out of them than others. I don't have a lot. It doesn't mean that I don't have these things in me. Perhaps it just means that my immune system is handling it in a different way. But I still take the bath. And Tony Pantalaresco has many, many. In fact, his latest is a triangle that he's built with magnets. And apparently some amazing things are coming out of people's bodies, including hexagonal, gem-like looking nanoparticles, or a couple of microns thick particles. So the problem with the Morgellons that couples it with the conductive nature of the metals in our bodies, this is a problem, because we're living in Wi-Fi environments now, and so this coupling is quickened by our cell phones. I don't own one. I won't own one. If you're carrying a cell phone around, you'd better figure it out, because you're probably being pulsed by the nearest towers, which can be manipulated by those who seek to experiment on human beings to see exactly what works, how and when and where. The cell phone is like carrying their own weapon around with you, and you're paying for it. So you're going to have to figure it out. I recommend everybody put it on airplane mode. Keep it on airplane mode. Get rid of it. And don't have it on your body. Fortunately, most people are texting now, so they're not putting it up to their brain. But just having it at night, I don't know what you're going to do. Recently, we had a meeting at someone's house, and we used a piece of cloth she had bought on the internet that was composed of copper and, let me think, what was it? And nickel. Copper and nickel. We put it over a cell phone, and we called the cell phone, and it literally shut the cell phone down. So it worked very well, very well. So you're going to have to look for cloaking, especially those who are physically challenged now with Morgellons outbreaks. and possible under the skin feeling of creepy crawly. All of this is due to acidity in the blood. You're going to have to change your diet and start thinking alkaline. There are certain things, certainly sugar produces acidity. You're going to have to really look at your diet habits and your lifestyle habits, and perhaps change some things for the sake of your immune system. Your immune system is your friend, and this is absolutely undermining the immune system. If you wonder why your immune system can't take care of your Morgellons, it literally cannot recognize the Morgellons as something that it should fight against, and that was bioengineered into the Morgellons. So it's like you're in a battle. You're in a war with many battles. You have to think like the enemy, so you can figure out what the enemy has genetically altered in order to produce a weapon, because that's really what these are. These are all chemical and biological weapons. So I'm only doing that practice. Do I take supplements? No, I do not. I'm macrobiotic. I've been macrobiotic for 45 years. I don't know how to take supplements. I don't know what I should take or any of that. So I just stick with whole food. And I end up cooking a lot, and I chew a lot. And even though I'm losing teeth now that I'm aging, I'm still going to chew a lot. So it's like I said in my introduction, you're going to have to figure out your battle strategy. But by all means, look at it as a battle strategy, because the war is long and the battles are many. So that's kind of how I'm responding to this healthcare person's question. I hope I've done some of the answering of it. Well, for growing food, I'm recommending to people that they have covered areas for growing food. I own a small microscope that you can buy on the internet. It's an LED 60 power microscope, $7 on the web. It's this big. I carry it in my purse. I can use it at a grocery store, and I can look at the fruit, or I can look at the vegetables that are in the organic section, and I'll see fibers pretty much on everything. So don't get the idea that you're going to see any of these fibers. They are everywhere. They are coming down all the time. So are the sensors. So are the microprocessors. So are the biologicals. It's just how it is.
Okay, if we could ask you to please keep your questions concise and to the point, and maybe just a couple of questions, not a whole string. Thank you very much.
This is Bill. Are these Morgellons the critters that are sucking the iron out of our red blood cells?
Yes.
Okay, I'm not familiar with the term Morgellons.
Right. It's not a good term. Clifford Carnicom has actually, he calls them cross-domain bacteria, because they actually are genetically engineered to cover all three domains of life on Earth. So the Morgellons term comes from, what is it, the 16th century, the 17th century? And it was picked up probably like chemtrails as a disparaging term, a confusing term by the mainstream media or CIA that controls it. But Morgellons is a genetically altered creature that has 5 parts to it. And if you want to learn about it, the best place to go is carnicominstitute.org.
And one word about Santa Rosa as we spoke.
Oh, yes. Yes, he asked me before I started about Santa Rosa. Yes, I do. I may have been one of the first people, if not the first people on a radio show to say that I had seen drone footage of Santa Rosa, and I had read 2 eyewitness accounts of the fires and the wind in the area when the fires struck, and that I immediately thought it might be a directed energy weapon that at least started the fire, because of Judy Wood's fantastic book, What Happened to the Towers?
Where did the towers go?
Where did the towers go? And in Judy Wood's book, when she was talking about 9/11, she very much talked about the fact that paper was able to survive this fire, these fires, this damage, but that everything else had been dustified. And that was the same thing with Santa Rosa, that the trees were still standing while everything else had been dustified. The other thing is the eyewitnesses mentioned this mysterious, terrible wind that came up, very strong, hot wind. And Judy Wood also had discussed many of the people there at Ground Zero who had experienced this same wind. So on this radio show, I did mention that, and then it just went crazy. Everyone was contacting me, and then everyone began talking about directed energy weapon. As to whether it is a laser or not, I don't know that, but a laser could fit the profile very, very well.
Thank you very much for your presentation. If you could be so kind to say a bit about vaccines, how this ties in the whole thing. And also, I have these excellent business-sized cards, if anyone would like to pass them out specifically to families with children. Feel free to come up to me.
I'm sorry, what did you want me to comment on?
How vaccines ties into this whole thing, because I've personally seen people of different ages destroyed by vaccines.
Ah, yes. Vaccines, for me, are another delivery system, and they have been changed over the years. They are not the same polio vaccine that many of us, maybe several of us in this room, were vaccinated with after the polio epidemic was over for months. So it's big pharma making money off of us, and yet it's also a delivery system, and the most horrid is the newborn babies. I lied for all my children. I had a doctor friend of mine fill out a schedule that was completely made up, and I was ready to go to jail. Yeah, and the advantage is that their immune systems are very strong. That's the problem I see with vaccinations in general, not just the delivery system ones that we are now experiencing. I'm in touch with New Zealand and Australia, and it's a horror. The law that's coming down the pike in Australia is that people, if they don't have their children vaccinated, they're going to jail. So it could be that here. We'll see. But it is a delivery system. Is GMOs a delivery system? Absolutely.
Hi there, Elana. So I know that there's kind of lots of reasons for why this is happening, but the only one that I can know for sure is that our connection with the cosmos is being destroyed. And so, you know, we've spiraled with the Earth for 1 million years, and I get up in the morning and I have like dirty sunrises, and the sun is hazed out, and I don't get to feel the real sunlight on my skin. Our cloud formations, the cumulus and the cirrus and the nimbus are no longer, they've been stolen. I can't go out at night to look at the stars. I can't see the constellations. And I think kind of the worst part is that I can't gaze into the great beyond at night, into space. And I'm so devastated that it's like hard for me to get up in the morning. And most of the people that I talk to about this, they just don't care. I mean, they can't see the stars at night, and they don't care. So isn't this a natural result for our apathy and our stupidity? I mean, don't we deserve this? Can you comment on the psychological and the spiritual effects of the planet now having glaucoma, and that this happens at the end of a planet's, an organism's life, and the fact that we've got this coming?
Well, we're living in a transition. Everything you said about being cut off from the cosmos, I absolutely agree with. The Solar Shield program, as they're calling it now, they've renamed it about 20 times, is very much about cutting us off from the cosmos. Of course, our cities have began that process a long time ago. And the false food that people eat, junk food as we call it, that began the process a long time ago. And now we have this obscuring of the stars, and we have 18% less solar light available to us now. And that is our star, our sun. As to whether, see, the way I look at it, and I admit that I look at things from a distance in a way. I've been through my period where I sat and wept. That's over. That's a long time ago. Because I've been on this trail for several years now, and you have to kind of gird up your loins for this thing. We're living in an era of transition. We're living in the beginning of a space age that is not at all the one President Kennedy had wished for. It's a militarized space age, and everything is being militarized, everything's being weaponized. It's full spectrum dominance the whole way. And do they have a plan? Yes, I believe they have a plan, and I believe they want another human race. They want something enhanced. That's what transhumanism means. They see us as weak. They see anything that feels compassion and connection as weak. And they want a more cyborg type of human being. And they now have discovered an incredible technique to do it. They're just going to implant us through our breathing and our eating and our ingestion with entities on a nano scale that can be programmed. They can be programmed. They can be zapped. They can do anything. This is a dream come true for power mongers and psychopaths. So my question is, yes, I'm not going to say get over your feelings, because your feelings are absolutely accurate. But gird up your loins is what I say, because this is going to be. We have to really come to the plate on this one, because generations are coming in the future, and I could go into the esoterics of this stuff that would make the hair on your neck stand up. I mean, are they changing our death process? Possibly. Are they changing, for those who realize that reincarnation is probably a law, are they changing the ability to reincarnate? Probably. These are things that have forced me into rapid and deep action, that where I will not really give up on this. But who are these people? I mean, some of you are probably thinking aliens, and no human being could do this. And well, these are global elites that have practices very different from your family, very different from how you treat your children. Many of these people have been raised in horrendous. I've worked for people who are from the global elites as a ghostwriter, and they are abused beyond belief in order to prepare them for power, for handling power. So this is how we have to realize is they are a different species from us without even importing aliens. Let's just take that at face value. And really make our lives pure, virtuous. We are in the right. There is no question in my mind. We are in the right. And we will continue in order to strengthen ourselves and strengthen our knowledge of the technology. And as our feelings come up, we will weep quietly and then go back to work. Okay?
Thank you for that. I loved the video at the beginning of the planetary system as a vortex. I'm really happy to, every time people are talking about our sun as a comet and, the heliocentric thing. I was surprised, though, not to see any mention of our sun being in a binary system. So I wanted to ask you about that and about a dark star companion, about a brown dwarf. I have strong reason to believe that not only this system is a binary system, but I've been told that all systems that have planets are in fact binary systems, and apparently that's something they don't want us to know because it would suggest that there's more order to the chaos than chaos. And I think the person I know who's talking most about this believes that you can prove that we live in a binary system with the precession of the equinox. And so I just wanted to know if you know any, apparently the Nazis knew about this dark star. What do you know about the binary companion? Why is it such a security risk? Apparently it has been detected. Why would, or do you have any theories about why would this dark star companion to our sun, Sol, want to be hidden from us?
Well, I don't know a lot about that, but I do know about the black sun. And the black sun is was very much central to the Nazi religion, and I have essays on it that I've read, but I don't feel any expertise whatsoever. But I'm glad you brought it up, because the Nazi dream is alive and well in America and has been for many years. So I'm assuming there are brotherhoods that are devoted to this kind of thing, and that some of them may be at NASA, because NASA is definitely not what you think it is.
There's a secret society.
Yeah. Yeah.
So where do you buy the Cloudbuster, or how do you make one?
Oh, yeah, I wish I knew how to make one. We have an expert here. If you can ask him after. There he is over there.
So the real right Cloudbuster is massive tubes. There are a few in the States. And then maybe what you might have is what's called a Don Croft.
Yeah, I have the one that is with the resin, and it has filaments of steel shavings and silver, and then ground up crystal in it, and then 6 copper poles sunk into the resin.
Those work initially, but there's things that people aren't doing right.
That's probably me.
That they don't work anymore. So
Okay.
these translators really work probably 100,000 times more powerful than what you're talking about.
Right, and the translator is the new part. But what would you recommend she look at on the net? Anything, Don Croft or anybody? No?
Whoever has my card, and I gave out his name.
Yeah, get his card.
Can you just give us your phone number?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you can text me, but don't overwhelm me all at once, please. My phone number, 408-315-3081, and the name is Sean.
You were going to say where we can look for more information, maybe, or just call you?
Yeah, so this technology was really hidden because it was developed for weather engineering, and this device that I showed you is not powerful enough to actually weather engineer, but it can. So we work in small teams right now with about 22 people in California that do this.
Pretty neat.
And we got people in the UK and Europe and stuff. So you don't need like thousands of people over California using these devices. To keep the atmosphere clean just in your own home and stuff, I would really recommend Organize. And as far as that, you can know that eventually we're going to grow big enough, and we have to kind of stay under the radar too, because this stuff works.
This stuff works. Yeah.
Is Trevor still with us, or?
No, he died. Okay, she has one more. Thank you.
Do you do anything else for heavy metal detox other than the borax bath that you mentioned?
Mostly for me, it's organic eating and keeping my intestinal tract really working well with the brown rice that I chew 50 to 100 times a mouthful. It sounds like a lot of work, but I'm so used to it after all these years. But it just goes through and cleans the walls of the intestinal tract. so that your immune system can stay strong. The intestinal tract is the very seat of your immune system. There is nothing more important than your intestinal tract. So if your diet is not helping you produce bowel movements that really look like they're wide and long and really going through a clean intestinal tract, so to speak, then you need to change your diet and think about what kind of roughage you can do to build the flora and fauna, keep them safe, and also clean the intestine at the same time. I am not for colonics. I am not for anything radical and dramatic and violent. I am for a daily regime of treating your intestinal tract.
Elana? Yes, I had a question. Well, a comment, all right? I'm reading your book right now under Ionized. The first one. Yes.
Right.
Okay, and I've noticed some of your comments on Morgellons kind of need expanding. Okay, this is actually what happened here. Although people talk about it as something that occurred evenly nationwide, it didn't happen like that at all. If you go to the Morgellons Research Foundation website, .org, you'll see all of these maps. And what happened was California was the only red state in terms of the number of people that got Morgellons. And within that state, there were two basically bullseyes in San Francisco Bay Area and the Los Angeles area. So out of the whole country, it wasn't just California that got hit the hardest. It was Los Angeles and San Francisco. And what was kind of interesting about it at the time is I was looking at artificial intelligence, and a lot of the gems and NEMS and all that stuff coming out of there, those are also used by artificial intelligence companies. And so like in the early 2007, 2006, they were actually throwing these up in there to collect data for their artificial intelligence. So in a sense, some of the MEMS that people are finding coming out of their skin may not be the military. They could be private companies. And I noticed that all the papers on this, like the publicity papers and the brochures on these big experiments on AI that they were throwing out, all these, they all kind of disappeared when people started showing these on YouTube coming out of people's bodies, like they were showing the GIMs or the MEMS of privately owned companies, like computer companies, were showing, and they all, and so all of the references in the AI work have kind of disappeared. You kind of have to go to trade journals and, have to know the right names and things. But there are a couple of fun things. One of them is that Stanager, Hildegard Stanager down in Los Angeles, actually makes everyone go through a full series of lab tests. And what
scans.
Yeah, she's finding like 30% Rh negative, and that's huge. I mean, if this is targeting someone in terms of genetics, and you can think of a lot of reasons, the different protein coatings on the cell, the artificial blood, and the whole genetic engineering experience with Rh negative women that has been going on here since the 1960s, which is a very, very, in my estimation, a very public experiment, human genetic engineering. I don't know what else to say, but anyway, so there are some interesting things, and some of it is genetic. And what I would say, if you really want to stay out of it, I mean, I would not go out in the rain. I would cover my body. I mean, it's like, okay, wear a hat. I mean, the people that really got it bad were in the LA beaches. People were going down to the LA beaches after they had. So many people got sick. I mean, so many people. Just being at the beaches, you're in the water, you're going your nose, it's dripping down, I mean, in your ears, everywhere. And so keeping dry when you're outside is kind of important, I think, and keeping covered. And also, there was a really good one here.
You have a question?
Yeah, I just want to show this one thing.
Yeah, we have questions. We have to move on.
Okay, you want to move on? Okay,
But very valuable information. Very valuable information. Thank you.
You mentioned the shielding fabric, and I was studying the earthing and the grounding, and I wondered if you've done any research about, the fact that our shoes changed from leather, which were conductive of the Earth's energy, to rubber and plastic in the 60s, and then we stopped being connected to whatever that energy is that maybe we need as a food to heal or keep ourselves healthy. And I'm just wondering whether that's, I've just been looking at the electromagnetic radiation and frequency and maybe all this other stuff that I didn't even know anything about. Maybe it doesn't help with that, but I wondered what you thought about the grounding of your bedroom, of your house.
Yeah, I think the grounding, I think you're absolutely right about the soles of shoes and that we don't go barefoot, that we don't have living fabric under our feet, because all that has to do with ether. That's all about ether, because the grounding works because you are getting a direct transfusion of ether up through your feet. Yeah, I haven't, for the grounding and the earthing. Yeah. Yes, I haven't gone that deeply into it, but that's exactly the kind of research area that people need to be looking at. Right. Right, Haines, Alaska, right. Okay, thank you for sharing that, yeah.
Thank you very much for coming here tonight. I'm been following your work for a while. I'm a medical doctor and a biomedical and electrical engineer, and I've given some talks in the area about this. And this is a very serious problem nowadays. And the question I have to you, and maybe I can make a comment about that, is that there is a full court press on now to get 5G, which is the next evolution of wireless, put on every utility pole. This county is embracing it because of the very strong influence of the technology companies. And these things in the future will start working at much smaller wavelengths, what we call millimeter waves. And I used to be a Canadian radar officer in the military. And I can tell you that when we start using 26 gigahertz and higher, things that Google is promoting to be delivering wireless from various different balloons and so on, these are the wavelengths that are the size of your acupuncture meridians. These are the wavelengths that are the size of your sweat glands in your skin. And you will be feeling this. They're already very highly used in Palo Alto. I measure things in the environment, and I can tell you the background microwave radiation is getting extremely high in the cities. And we test people for electrical hypersensitivity using German biological medicine, where I was born. Dr. Klinghardt in Seattle area, you're familiar with, mentioned that a lot of the organisms become more virulent under microwave influence,
yes,
etc. So I just wanted to know if you would comment on this ongoing, very direct threat, not even talking about space technologies and so on, but what our telecommunications companies have in mind for our neighborhoods.
Yes, the 5G is extremely important, and I appreciate how you described it, because you are absolutely right. The problem is, how do we band together as neighborhoods to confront it, possibly even eco-war operations, because this will impact our genetics over the long run. And I believe that the 5G is the linchpin of the Space Fence AI system, because it will be in touch with all the Internet of Things. Your refrigerator talking to your washing machine, talking to your cell phone, talking to your car, all of this that has been, this infrastructure that has been built around us very quietly in the name of convenience and comfort is really a weapon. And we're going to have to figure out, keep an eye out in your neighborhoods and see what they're putting up on the utility poles. And they are a small antenna, aren't they? Have you seen them? Right.
Cities are allowing it, so it's really a matter of the community paying attention. Another fact I just want to mention that everybody in here should know their vitamin D levels, because vitamin D, which we used to get from sunlight, in California, I'm seeing an epidemic of people with low vitamin D levels, and that's very much what Rudolf Steiner said since you're at the top of the Orient,
Right.
as I am.
Yes.
That's really what helps me stay incarnated.
Yes.
So basically, what's taking place right now is people are being taken out of their bodies prematurely, not just from the latest flu epidemics, which has been higher than normal, but because people are not keeping up with the environmental changes that are starting to affect our expression of our genes. So, we really need community-wide action in order to help each other cleanse our bodies.
Right. Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much. Are we done? Are we done with
No.
Q&A? I don't know
Hello.
where we are. Oh, sorry.
I want to thank you also for, presenting all this to us. This is the first time I've been exposed to any of this, so I'm like,
Oh, wow.
I might be the only one here. But my question is very simple. You've thrown a lot of information out there, which to me is like, mind-boggling. I'm wanting to know, is there a source, a place where we can go, I don't know if it's your book or what, where we can get a good, solid recap or an explanation of all this material that you've presented here?
Yeah, I think it has to be my book, but there's also a lot of sites on the web and YouTubes and things about various aspects of things I've covered tonight. But I did tailor the talk to presenting the overarching picture of the space age. And I give all different kinds of talks. I could have done it in a very different way, but we need to understand that the justification on the side of the military and the military contractors is that it's the space age and they need to do this. Yeah, so I do recommend the book, but you probably, if this is new to you, you probably should read the first book first. And I don't have any copies left of that. I sold them all.
Thanks a lot.
But thank you for coming. Very brave of you. Yeah. Yeah. Are we done?
There's some people in the hallway that are getting ready to leave.
Yeah, let's I know there's many more questions. Let's talk.
Really quick question. Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't in charge.
Hey, Elena, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Thank you very much for all you've shared with us tonight. But
You can
I
come
want to
up to
ask
me after.
one quick question. Do you think the popular culture narrative of climate change, global warming, is a cover for the military heating of the ionosphere? Okay.
Absolutely.
Just wanted to know.
Do you think that the global warming, climate change is narrative is a cover for the military heating of the ionosphere? Yes. Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
this is the last one.
Okay, last one.
Thank you so much. I have two questions. The first one is, why are our universities so anti-American? If you support freedom of speech, well, guess what? That means that you're against political correctness, so you're wrong. Secondly, Why? Okay, my second question is, why do universities claim that they promote diversity, yet the second that you have a diversity of opinion, you're completely shut down? Going back to what you said about vaccinations, in my class I learned that if you're against vaccinations, that means that you're brainwashed by conservative media. So my question is, why is there such an imbalance in our university system? I think it's great to have different perspectives, but there's something incredibly wrong when it is so one-sided, and if you disagree with their social justice tactics, then you're labeled as racist. That's my question.
I absolutely agree that it's imbalanced in universities. And have you considered that you are young and you are targeted as someone that they want to bring you into a fold regarding how you should think? Have you considered that's how important youth is now? You will be targeted over and over again by professors and whole university systems to make you think in a certain way and not go outside that.
And that's why I'm here today.
And I'm glad you're here today.